Dr. Neil Riordan. Am I saying that right?
Yes, sir.
And Mel Gibson. How are you,
Hello,
sir?
hey, how you doing?
Welcome aboard, folks. First of all, thanks for coming here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Very nice to
welcome.
meet you.
No, it's cool
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Nice to meet you, too. So this, you wanted to come in and talk about stem cells.
Yeah.
So what's your experience been, and what's this calling that you have here?
Well, I was initially, it was for my dad, who was, he was 92, and he was doing all the old man stuff. His hip was killing him, and he was like, he had multiple problems. I mean, I won't get into the whole litany of complaints, but hey, your engine starts wearing out. You got to replace the carburetor and a few other things. And I took him to the Mayo Clinic. Great place. If I ever get into serious trouble, that's where I'm going. And they were fantastic there, but they were able to say, "Oh, you got to leave me here. He'll be dead in 48 hours." I'm like, "Oh." So they clocked every problem that he had. Everything from, the prostate to the hip, to the kidneys, to the heart, to the lung, the whole deal. And they stabilized him. They said, "Okay, we'll do this and we'll do this," and they did some, orthodox medical procedures, all allowed in this country, and they were great. But I still had reservations about him getting a hip replacement because he was old, and of course, just the recovery from a traumatic surgery at that age is like, it's a big deal. And I thought, well, what can I do? And my brother says, "Why don't you look into these adult stem cells?" I'm like, I've heard things about this, You grow a spare mouth on your head, or you end up with an extra asshole or something. But I was like, okay, we'll look into it. So we did. And of course, a buddy of mine who was a Mayo doc, he said, "Stay away from those witch doctors down in Panama." He said, "It's like leprosy and banana boats and three-legged dogs, And I'm like, can we call them? And so Brad and I got on the phone to Neil, and who else was it?
It's Dr. Paz, our medical doctor.
It was the two of these guys. And so they're talking highfalutin terms, medical, all being medicos. They know what a mesenchymal stem cell, or mesenchymal, how do you say it?
Mesenchymal, yeah.
Mesenchymal,
So where did you have to go? This is not legal in America. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. Right now, there are clinical trials going on in the U.S., but it's not broadly available. And in Panama, they passed a law in 2004 which allowed doctors actually to go down there to be able to treat people with using adult stem cells. So the bill was actually designed to prohibit the use of embryonic stem cells, and in the same law they said it's okay to use adult stem cells, including those from umbilical cord, basically from ethical sources. And so in Panama, they gave us, we have a license from the Ministry of Health to manufacture and use those cells in addition to doing clinical trials there. So it's one place on the planet where you can get really high quality umbilical cord, this type of cell. There are two major kind of stem cells. We only work with one kind, the mesenchymal, or we just call it MSC. It's a lot easier. And so anyway, that's how I think we actually owned apartments in the same building in Panama, never met each other, and we met through his brother finding us on the internet. And
there you go.
And then they brought him down to get treatment. We were quite hesitant to take him, because the last thing you want is Mel Gibson's dad to drop dead in your clinic, and he wasn't in great shape, So
he wasn't in good shape at all.
But as I recall, when he got there, he was in a wheelchair and really wasn't talking a lot and things like that, and having a pretty rough time. And then so after getting medical clearance for him to actually fly down there, and Mel flew him down there privately, then we did some IVs on him first in the clinic, and then to do the hip, we need to do that.
When you said did some IVs, what do you mean?
So we give the umbilical cord. These are isolated from basically the meat of the umbilical cord. They're isolated, then they're grown in our laboratory, which is ISO 9001 and very high quality and certified by the Ministry of Health. they're grown in the laboratory and they're certified to be, free of everything, any kind of infectious disease.
Yeah, I went into the clean rooms, and they make you put on like hats and gloves, and you feel like all Frankensteined out, and you walk into these cold rooms, and you're watching cells divide under the microscope. It's kind of miraculous, really, to look at this stuff.
So, intravenous stem cells.
Right, intravenous, that's correct.
And what's the benefit of intravenous stem cells? Like, what does that do?
Well, the good thing is that this kind of stem cell, the mesenchymal stem cell, they're found throughout your body, and normally what they do is they modulate your immune system, they decrease inflammation, and they stimulate regeneration. So, and the good thing about them is they tend to home to areas where there is inflammation. So really they do 4 things. They control inflammation, they modulate the immune system, and they stimulate regeneration. Those are the main 3 things they do. But one of the craziest things, I've heard a lot of talk about mitochondria here. This discovery was just made a couple years ago. There's a reference to it maybe 6 or 7 years ago, but a group a couple years ago published in Nature, and they showed that the cells actually donate mitochondria to sick cells. So if your cells are sick and you infuse MSCs, they donate their mitochondria. So what's even cooler than that is they triage the cells, and if the cells have enough mitochondria to survive, they'll just pass. They'll just say, "Oh, you're cool," and then if they don't have enough mitochondria to survive with their donation, they just say, "Well, you're dead," and they move on to the next one, and then it's in between, and they say, "Oh, look, I can help you," and they deliver mitochondria.
Tell me where you get the stem cells from that you use in these procedures.
The umbilical cord's cut, baby's taken away, and then some short time thereafter, mother delivers the afterbirth, which includes the placenta and the umbilical cord and the amnion, and all of that tissue is rich in cells, and these cells are basically biologic garbage, and they're thrown away. So what we do is we take that tissue. You've reset the clock. These are day 0 cells from a baby that was just born. They have a high degree of ability to reproduce and to secrete the 3 major things that we know that they do in the body. They secrete a batch of molecules that stimulate regeneration, that decrease inflammation, and modulate the immune system. So their main job in the body is to maintain the status quo. So when you're sick, you're not maintaining the status quo. When you're 70, you're not maintaining the status quo. Look at yourself. Look at a picture of you 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You haven't maintained the status quo. Things are going south. And so these cells, their job is to maintain the status quo, and that's why I think they're so important for aging research and for chronic illness.
What stem cells do can seem little short of miraculous.
What I do myself and what I think is going to be ultimately the answer for a lot of age-related decline and age-related chronic diseases is taking young, healthy stem cells, for example, from umbilical cord, and using those to supplement what you have. Because not only do they do the job of the stem cells that you used to have, but they also stimulate what you have left to behave younger. So they are the reason you renew yourself. And one question I get quite often is, how can these stem cells treat so many conditions? And the simple answer to that is the root cause of most of those conditions is lack of stem cells. Either lack of stem cells or the ones you have left aren't working properly. So if the common cause is that, then it would make sense that the treatment of choice would be replacement of those stem cells with ones that are healthy and ones that are active.
So the MSC numbers go down with age at a depressing rate, meaning it depresses me at how few I have right now. So there's not only an age-related decline in the number, but there's an age-related decline in the fitness or the robustness of these cells. And these cells are the major. They are homeostasis for our bodies, right? They are what create homeostasis for the immune system, homeostasis for blood pressure. They are the major modulators of health. So here's a depressing slide. So when you're born, 1 in 10,000 cells in your body is in your bone marrow are MSCs, and at the time of skeletal maturity, that's declined by 90%, and that's basically what you got to live on for the rest of your life. Another depressing slide. So if you take cells from a newborn and you grow them in the laboratory, and we do this, that's what we do. We take umbilical cords from live healthy births, from cesarean sections, and the baby's born and delivered, the cord is cut, and then when the afterbirth comes out, then we take the cord from there, take it back to the lab, we digest it, get the MSCs, and we grow them up in large numbers. We have a big screening test for which ones are good and which ones aren't, but so we grow these cells all the time, and the average doubling time is 24 hours. If you take cells from a 35-year-old, the average doubling time is 2 days, 48 hours. If you take them from a 65-year-old, the average doubling time is 60 hours. So that sounds kind of linear, but in the newborn, when we grow those cells up, you can start with 1 cell. At the end of a month, you have 1 billion cells. And the 35-year-old, you have 32,000 cells. And a 65-year-old, you have 200 cells. So if you need 1,000 cells and you only make 200, we've got a math problem. The regeneration-degeneration axis is tilted in favor of degeneration. So that's why we do what we do. That's why the cells that we use work so well, particularly in an aging population.